Hello and welcome to SOLIDWORKS Skills video.
In this video, I'll be demonstrating a few tips for Worksheet 6. I will not be showing how to do the entire worksheet, however. Shown here is an assembly that is completed, and when you're all done, the assembly should look like this. You should be able to move the carriage left and right smoothly, and we'll talk about some of the things that make that possible. When you begin a job like this, it's always best to take the things that you know and assert them immediately. For example, if you look at the worksheet, I'm having you create a few parts: the shaft clamps, and I provide to you some parts that are already made, like the DeWalt router body and the slide bearings and the hardware. So among all of that, you can go pretty far down the path by taking the parts you create and the ones that I've provided and assembling them using the various constraints, the mate constraints that place them where they ought to be, whether it's an insert constraint for the shaft into the shaft clamps, the same thing of the shafts into the bearings being parallel or spaced from each other, and on and on. And like I said, there's a number of things that you can do long in advance of creating these two custom parts: the mounting device, this mounting plate, and the clamp that holds the router in place. Another thing you can definitely do in advance, and you must do, is to place the router itself in relation to the bearings that you'll be placing, and that will allow you then to create the plate and clamp relative to all of the above. Let me turn on the visibility for the axis, and you can see, for example, that as I rotate around, that the axis of the router is visible now, and you can, for example, dimension from that to a feature you find interesting, and in fact you should dimension it both in a left to right way and a distance from here to here, and you'll find with distance mates you can achieve all of the above. Now I'm going to remove a couple of screws here just to show you how they're put in. I'll delete this and I'll delete one more, and then I'll show you how to add them back. So now I've got two holes that don't have screws. By the way, as part of the worksheet, you are to add the hardware to all of the holes. Now, if you think about it, when you want to put a screw in a hole, basically you have two constraints that you're dealing with. You have a constraint. Let me get back to, all right, there's my screw over on the left. I've already opened it. I've got it ready to access. Now, what I was saying is that when you put a screw into a hole, you've got two constraints. You have an insert constraint where you're putting the cylinders in alignment so that they are concentric, and then you're also placing the underside of the head of the screw to be flush against the mounting surface. In SOLIDWORKS, there is an automated way to do both of those with one motion, and I'm about to do that. So what do I want? I want to have that edge made up with that edge. So let's go ahead and do it. You can, once you've got them open, and this is a nice orientation. Look at the screen, how I have the fastener. I can see the underside. I've got the place that they're going. I can zoom out a little bit, make both holes visible, and I'll just go to, now I got to select carefully. I'll select the innermost corner, which is that, click and drag it into place and drop it into the hole, and you'll see that it automatically created two constraints. I'll do it one more time. Drag this guy over to here. It works pretty hard to find it, and let's get it to refresh here. Sometimes the screen doesn't refresh properly, but it did in fact put the screw in place. A few other things I want to point out on the assembly. Let me hide my axes. I don't want to see them anymore. Okay, notice that there is an intentional gap here, and you'll achieve that by creating a sketch plane that is offset from this surface. So you'll be creating the clamp after you have created your mounting plate, and you'll create a plane that allows you to have it be offset. And the purpose here is that when you tighten this screw, it has some area, motion, so that it can really firmly clamp down upon the body of the router and hold it in place. One of the things I mentioned in the worksheet, I'll open up one of these shaft clamp parts, and you'll notice that it is really composed of a single extrude. Here's the sketch for it. I will open the sketch, and you'll see the dimensions for this part. Right now they are shown in metric. When you're starting to create your part, because I expect that most of you will have your systems pre-configured for inch usage, so I'll go up to options here. You see the little options gear, go to document properties, and you'll probably be set initially for inches, and we'll take a look at. So this is probably what you'll be seeing if you started to put dimensions in, but I've asked you to, in the worksheet, work in metric. So you'll go over to options, go back to options as I am doing here, click on document properties, click on units, and select the millimeter gram second instead of inch pound seconds. And also you can change the number of decimal places for your precision. So you click on OK, and here we are in metric dimensioning mode. And now the shaft hole is a nice clean 12 millimeters. A few of the other things are in millimeters, nice clean numbers as well. So this may help you. The same applies to your drawings. When I go over to, for example, that same part in, I got to finish the, that's a good thing to see. If you leave a model in rollback state, in other words, it's still in the sketch mode, it will complain to you, I need to finish the part, and go back into the fully formed view. Now I can go back to my the drawing of it, and you'll see the same thing, the same way is used to make the dimensions on your drawing be either in metric or in other format, inch for example. I would click on this. It'll probably come in again because you're based mostly in inches. It'll probably look like this, and notice that the shaft dimension is 0.472, which is an inch dimension. You go up to here, document properties, units. You can change the precision here as well, and I'll change over to millimeters, and now it is dimensioned as we want it in metric. Okay, returning to the assembly, a couple of other notes to make. Please make sure that the router is oriented as shown, and that when you're all done, the switch and the switch housing has clearance. I'll rotate around, you get a sense of what it really ought to look like. You can see how the bearings are mounted, and the fact that I have this clearance on both sides and that the screws are there. That's pretty much it for my guidance. Work your way through the worksheet, and if you have questions, please be sure to speak immediately with your TA.
Thank you for watching. This video is part of a series created by Neil Rosenberg and Joseph Caswell. All rights reserved.